I didn't expect my whole life to collapse at a Christmas party, but that's exactly what happened. It was December 22nd, the annual company holiday gathering. Cheap decorations taped to the conference hall walls, half-warm catered food on folding tables, and a playlist that jumped awkwardly between Mariah Carey and some EDM track our intern swore was festive. Everyone was drinking too much cheap wine, laughing too loud, pretending we didn't all hate being there. I wasn't in the mood, but I showed up because skipping would have looked uncommitted. When my boss walked up to the microphone, I thought he was going to give the usual speech. Another great year, thanks to everyone, cheers to bigger things ahead. But instead, he adjusted his tie, cleared his throat, and looked right at me. The entire room fell quiet. "You," he said, pointing at me like I was a problem he was about to erase. "You are no longer part of this company. We have passed." That was it. 12 words. A sentence that hit harder than any layoff email ever could. People gasped. Some laughed nervously. I just stood there, my plastic cup of cranberry punch trembling in my hand. He didn't call me into an office. He didn't send HR. He fired me in front of everyone, like I was an example. Security was already waiting. Two guys in blazers stepped up from the back of the room as if this had been rehearsed. My keycard beeped red at the door when I tried to swipe out. My computer access was cut instantly. The party went on around me like nothing happened. Laughter, glasses clinking, coworkers looking anywhere but my direction. I want to pause here because I need you to understand something. I'm not sharing this story to make you pity me. I'm sharing it because what happened next shocked even me. And if you've ever been blindsided, humiliated, or discarded by someone in power, then you already know this feeling, the mix of rage, shame, and cold clarity that floods your chest all at once. I remember walking across the parking lot that night, snow falling under the yellow glow of the street lamps, clutching a cardboard box with my personal stuff. My hands were shaking, not from the cold, but from holding everything in. My whole career, years of grinding, of late nights, of solving problems nobody else even saw, erased in 12 seconds. At that moment, I thought it was over. Rent was due. My savings weren't bottomless. My parents were expecting me for Christmas. I hadn't even told them how rough things had been. And now I was supposed to explain that I'd been fired like a villain in some bad office sitcom. But here's the thing. What my boss didn't realize is that I wasn't as powerless as he thought. He believed I'd walk away quietly, humiliated, maybe disappear into some low-level job and never bother him again. What he didn't know, and what I hadn't even fully realized myself, was that he'd just made the biggest mistake of his career, because you don't humiliate someone who has receipts. You don't humiliate someone who knows how the company actually runs. And you definitely don't humiliate someone who has quietly built more loyalty outside the boardroom than inside it. That night, while people were still clinking glasses at the party, my phone buzzed. A message, just 4 words that would change everything. "Call me. Tonight. L." I'll get to who L was and why that text turned my whole situation upside down in the next part. But if you've ever wanted to see karma hit hard and fast, stay with me, because this story doesn't end with humiliation. It ends with payback. And trust me, you're going to want to hear it. If you like stories like this, raw, real, and satisfying, don't forget to follow, so you don't miss what happens when the fallout starts the very next morning. When people hear I was fired in public at a Christmas party, they often assume I must have been underperforming, lazy, or maybe had done something reckless. That's exactly what my boss wanted everyone to believe. But the truth was very different. I wasn't the loudest in meetings. I wasn't the one dropping buzzwords or attaching my name to every PowerPoint slide. But behind the scenes, I had quietly become the person holding things together. The one weaving connections that no dashboard or spreadsheet could measure. Let me give you an example. 3 months earlier, One of our top clients had an executive whose wife was going through chemo. It was brutal. The man was juggling contracts and hospital visits, and you could see it wearing him down. Everyone else just treated him like another signature on a form. I made a point of checking in with him, not in a pushy way, just to ask how his family was doing. I shifted deadlines, rearranged calls, made sure his team didn't drown while he was in hospital corridors. Later, he told me that small act kept them from pulling millions in business. Or there was the compliance nightmare. A partner had a clause buried on page 37 of an agreement, one of those things legal departments love to sneak in. If it hadn't been flagged, we could have faced penalties that would have shredded a whole quarter's profits. I caught it, renegotiated it quietly, and logged the notes. My boss? He dismissed it as overthinking paperwork. A month later, the auditors confirmed it saved us. And then there was the map, my personal system. Officially, it didn't exist, but I had built a living document, a web of who actually responded, who stalled, who had influence. It wasn't just numbers, it was human patterns. Which assistant you needed to call at 4:55 p.m. to get a signature pushed through by 5, which client never trusted email but would answer a midnight text, which regulator needed context phrased in plain English, not corporate jargon. Nobody asked me to build this, but I did because I knew no machine learning dashboard or quarterly presentation could capture the truth. That was my ledger, not in Excel, not in KPIs, but in people. And people, as it turns out, are what keep companies alive. My boss hated this. He despised anything that couldn't be measured in a chart. "We don't pay you to babysit," he once snapped, after overhearing me ask a client about their recovery from surgery. But when renewals came through, he was happy to take the credit. His slides looked sharp because my messy, invisible work kept the foundation from cracking. 2 weeks before the Christmas meeting, I saw signs. My inbox pinged with a final performance review reminder. The phrasing was strange, generic, like it had been copied from a template. I asked HR about it, and they said they'd never seen the document. 3 days before the party, he pulled me aside after a meeting. "Don't get too comfortable," he said, smiling like it was a joke. But his eyes didn't smile. And then, just an hour before the holiday gathering, at 5:58 p.m., I received an email marked urgent. It was a so-called final warning about failure to align with company culture. No details, no metrics, just that phrase. The timing couldn't have been accidental. He had queued it up to drop right before the spectacle. By the time I arrived at the party, I knew something was off. Still, I didn't imagine he'd actually do it in front of everyone. That was a different level of cruelty. The worst part wasn't the words. It was the silence in the room. People I'd worked with for years stared into their glasses, or at the floor, pretending it wasn't happening. A few looked guilty, like they wanted to step in but couldn't risk their own jobs. But here's what my boss miscalculated. Humiliation only works if the victim feels powerless. I didn't. I had my ledger. I had clients who trusted me. I had colleagues who knew what I'd really built. And that's why, when I walked out into the snowy parking lot, phone buzzing with that message from L, I already sensed the tide shifting. He thought he had erased me. But what he didn't know was that the very next day, the foundation he had ignored would start crumbling without me, and I wouldn't need to lift a finger. The Christmas party had the kind of forced cheer you could smell. Stale cookies, cheap champagne fizzing flat in plastic cups, fairy lights sagging between cubicles. It was supposed to be a celebration, but instead it turned into my execution. When my boss tapped the microphone, people quieted, expecting the usual speech about another strong year. He glanced at the projector screen, year-end wins in bold red letters, and then he looked straight at me. "You are no longer part of this company," he said, his voice steady, rehearsed. "We have passed." For a few seconds, no one moved. I heard the clink of a glass being set down, the faint hum of the holiday playlist cutting awkwardly to silence. Then whispers, nervous laughter, someone coughing. I tried to swallow, but my throat was dry. I hadn't even realized he could strip me of dignity this fast, this publicly. No closed-door meeting, no HR procedure, just spectacle. I caught eyes across the room. Jenna from accounting, she looked at me, then down at her shoes. Mark from sales, he gave me a quick, apologetic shake of the head. Even Claire from HR, who should have been part of this process, stared at the floor like she wasn't even in the room. Then, as if on cue, two men in dark blazers appeared from the back. Security. They didn't put hands on me, but they didn't need to. The message was clear. Leave now. I placed my cup on the nearest table and walked past my coworkers, who suddenly found the decorations fascinating. One guy even lifted his phone, pretending to check something, but I caught him recording. My humiliation was going to live online forever. The hallway outside was lined with tinsel and fake snowflakes taped to the walls. It should have felt festive. Instead, it felt like a walk to the gallows. "Grab your things," one guard said flatly. When I swiped my badge at the office door, the reader blinked red. Access denied. My boss had timed the lockout perfectly. He'd wanted me to feel the full force of isolation, cut off from my files, my email, my entire professional existence. The guards walked me to my desk anyway, hovering like shadows as I opened drawers. My mug with the chipped handle, a stack of sticky notes with scribbled reminders, a framed photo from last summer's team barbecue, all shoved into a cardboard box, the kind that looks the same in every corporate downfall. As I packed, I heard laughter from the party echo down the hall. It stung more than I expected. Just 30 feet away, people were clinking glasses while I was erasing my existence from the office. On my chair sat the small notebook I always kept, the one where I tracked calls, client quirks, renewal schedules, my private ledger. For a moment, I considered leaving it, like a parting gift. Then I thought about the hours, the late nights, the trust poured into those pages. No, that book was mine. I slid it into the box. When I finally walked out, box in hand, the fairy lights flickered above me. My shoes squeaked against the polished floor. Security didn't say goodbye. At the elevator, I looked back once. Through the glass walls, I could see the party still going, my boss laughing into a champagne flute, already rewriting the story in his head. To him, I was just another cautionary tale, the one who couldn't keep up. But what he didn't realize was that you can't delete relationships like files on a server. You can't erase the memory of every call I took at midnight, every deadline I saved. When I stepped outside into the cold night air, snow drifting down under the streetlights, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I balanced the box awkwardly, fished it out, and saw the message again. "Call me. Tonight. L." I stared at it, breath clouding in the freezing air. Inside, my boss was celebrating. Out here, I was supposed to feel defeated. But instead, a small spark lit in my chest. Because humiliation is only permanent if you let it be. And my boss was about to learn that the system he thought he controlled was already slipping through his fingers. I didn't sleep that night. After leaving the office, I sat in my car with the box on the passenger seat, staring at the snow sliding down the windshield. I felt hollow, like someone had scooped me out. But my phone kept buzzing, first with sympathy texts from coworkers, the brave ones, then with something else. 3 missed calls, 2 voicemails, and that message. "Call me. Tonight. L." I knew who L was. Lauren, a former client I'd gone above and beyond for when her department was drowning in compliance audits. She had my personal number from those long nights, and she hadn't forgotten. I called. She answered on the first ring. "You're out, aren't you?" Her tone wasn't surprised, more like she'd been expecting it. I told her what happened, the public firing, the guards, the humiliation. She was quiet for a moment, then said, "Good. Then you're free. Come work with us." I laughed, bitter. "Lauren, I don't even have my files. I don't have—" "You don't need files," she interrupted. "You have what matters. The map. The way you connect dots no one else sees. We've been trying to replicate it since you left our account. We can't. You can. And we need that. Her words stuck. For the first time that night, I didn't feel like trash someone had kicked to the curb. I felt wanted. But before I could even process it, another call came through. A competitor. Sleek, charming, offering triple my old salary if I brought a little insider perspective, the kind of offer that smelled like legal trouble. I hung up fast. Then came the third, my old mentor, now at a boutique firm. He didn't promise millions. He just said, I know what they did. Let's build something better. No games. I sat there, the heater humming, snow piling higher on the hood. My hand shook as I held the phone. 3 paths, 3 futures. And in that moment, I had to decide what kind of person I wanted to be. I could have gone nuclear, taken the shady offer, handed over insider info, watched my old boss's empire burn. But that wasn't me. Revenge that dirty never ends clean. Instead, I called Lauren back. I'll help, I said, but on my terms. No stolen files. No poaching. If anyone follows, it's because they choose to. She didn't hesitate. Done. We'll draft it that way. By 3 a.m., I had an offer in my inbox. Nothing flashy, just clarity. A clean slate. I closed the laptop and finally exhaled. My partner stirred on the couch where she'd been waiting for me. She had set out 2 plates of food, cold pasta, garlic bread gone stiff. She blinked sleepily and asked, You okay? I wanted to lie, to say yes, but instead I admitted the truth. I don't know, but I think this might be the start of something. She smiled, pulled the blanket tighter around herself, and said, Then let's start. The next morning, I woke up to snow sparkling on the street, like the world had been reset. My phone buzzed again. Another call from the shady competitor, this time more insistent. I blocked the number, because I'd made my choice. Integrity over shortcuts. Building over burning. But don't mistake me. Just because I chose the clean path doesn't mean my old boss was safe. The fallout was already on its way, faster than he could imagine. And this time, I wouldn't have to lift a finger. All I had to do was keep moving forward. By Monday at 9:12 a.m., the first crack showed. Lauren forwarded me a thread from my old account's biggest client. Subject line, Renewal, on hold. Inside, a director I knew well wrote, We need to pause until we can confirm continuity of risk controls. That sentence sounds harmless unless you speak corporate. In corporate, I'll pause means we're about to walk. At 9:47, a second message. A regulator had bounced one of our quarterly attestations. It wasn't a disaster on its own, but the note under it chilled me. Previous context missing? Please resubmit with historical mitigation detail. That context had lived in the margins of my updates, the human explanations my boss called fluff. He'd deleted fluff last week to make the audit folder look clean. Before noon, 3 more customers replied with the same concern from different angles. We're fine continuing, but where is the escalation map we were promised? Who is the new single point of contact? Who owns post-incident debriefs now that my name is out? In a normal quarter, you can absorb a wobble. In the last week of December, with renewals jammed and staff on PTO, a wobble is an earthquake. An ally in finance, Jenna, sent me a message from her personal account. No greeting, just a screenshot of a dashboard. Churn risk spiking from green to migraine red. Underneath she wrote, He told us to roll forward numbers anyway. Another screenshot. My ledger folder gone from the drive. Timestamp, the afternoon of the party. Deleted by admin. Admin was my boss. If you've never watched a company try to spreadsheet its way out of trust problems, it looks like this. HR sends scripted empathy emails. We value your partnership. Our team is here for you during transitions. Your business is important to us. Every sentence technically correct, emotionally empty. Meanwhile, real people on the client side are asking, when we had an outage at 2 a.m., who will call my cell first? And there's no macro for that. By 3 p.m., Lauren pinged me. They're rattled. Can you help us craft a continuity note? We wrote it together, line by line. No swagger. No shots at my former employer. Just specifics. Who to call, what happens at each threshold. The promise that a human would answer within 10 minutes. She sent it. Silence, then replies like rain. This is what we needed. Approved. Let's proceed. At 4:22, my old boss texted me for the first time since the party. Misunderstanding Friday. Optics got messy. Let's talk about a contractor pathway. Good rate. I stared at the screen. He'd fired me like a circus act and now wanted to rent back my quiet labor to patch the hole. I typed and deleted 3 versions of no before settling on the cleanest one. I appreciate the outreach. I'm pursuing other opportunities. Please direct future communications to my personal email. He responded instantly, be smart. Loyalty matters in this town. I set the phone down and let the line go cold. That evening, Jenna called. I picked up to the sound of office chaos. Phones ringing, muffled arguing, the hum of too many fluorescent lights. They're trying to replicate your escalation map with a template from Ops, she said. It's not landing. Also, someone recorded Friday. I stopped pacing. Recorded? She lowered her voice. The whole thing. Mike, we have passed. Security. Everything. It's already with compliance because Claire is terrified HR gets dragged into it. I didn't send it. I'm just warning you. I didn't ask Jenna to leak anything. I didn't need the file. The fact that it existed meant control had shifted. Public humiliation plays differently when there's a replay button. The next morning, an email copied to senior leadership went out from legal, with a subject so bland it screamed, Reminder, Public Personnel Actions and Policy. Inside, it quoted 3 lines from the employee handbook in the driest language possible, basically saying, don't do that again. My boss replied, all claiming the event had been a spontaneous coaching moment that may have been misinterpreted. A minute later, legal responded, privately this time. 4 minutes after that, my boss walked past Jenna's pod, pale as printer paper. Clients noticed, too. Not the memo. They never care about our internal memos. They noticed outcomes. A regulator asked for a historical mitigation note my boss had wiped, and the team sent back a diagram with arrows and buzzwords that could have been a whiteboard from a sales kickoff. Insufficient, the regulator wrote. Resubmit with names, dates, corrective actions, external attestations. That was my language. The backlog started growing in hours, not days. My old mentor called that afternoon. You keep your hands clean, you hear me? He said before I could speak. They'll try to provoke you into saying something reckless or sharing something you shouldn't. Don't. Let gravity do its work. I was trying, but gravity got an assist that night. At 7:31 p.m., a link landed in my personal inbox from an unknown address. No message, just a file sharing icon. Normally, I'd ignore it, but I clicked and there it was. The party, shaky phone angle, fairy lights, my boss at the mic, his voice crisp. You are no longer part of this company. We have passed. Then the guards entering the frame. Then the cut to my back as I walked away with nothing but a box. My chest went hot, then cold. I closed the tab and sat very still until my pulse slowed. I didn't forward it. I didn't upload it. I didn't need to. Whoever had sent it had also sent it to other places. I knew that because 20 minutes later, Jenna texted, Board added an extraordinary session. Tomorrow. Our building, 3rd floor. Executive comp likely on hold. A minute after that, my boss tried another angle. We can issue a joint statement. Say it was a miscommunication. We're exploring reconciliation. Optics win-win. I typed, no statement. He escalated. Be careful with what you're leaking. We track endpoints. I laughed out loud, alone at my kitchen table. The only thing I was leaking was compassion to the people who'd chosen to treat me like a person. I put my phone face down and let the threat sag against the silence. Wednesday morning, I met Lauren's team in a small conference room that smelled like dry erase markers and new carpet. We diagrammed the first 2 weeks: who owns what, where the pager rotates, how we measure response. It wasn't glamorous, but people exhaled while we did it. You could feel shoulders drop, a whole room unclenching. When we finished, a project manager who'd barely made eye contact at first shook my hand and said, "It has been chaos since you left. This feels like ground." In the afternoon, while I was reviewing a vendor clause, my phone buzzed again. A former colleague, quiet, brilliant, always 2 steps ahead, sent a single line. "Claire just walked out of the boardroom crying." I didn't gloat. Claire had stared at the floor on Friday because that's where fear makes you look. I poured a glass of water and sat with the guilt of being relieved things were moving without enjoying anyone's pain. Around 5, as the sky bruised to early winter night, an email rolled through the industry like weather. A notice of leadership transition from my old company. Soft words wrapped around a hard fact. My boss was stepping back from day-to-day responsibilities pending an internal review. His bonus was under evaluation. Staff were thanked for their professionalism during this busy season. My phone lit up with exclamation point texts. I didn't answer right away. I took a slow lap around the block, breath turning to fog. It wasn't victory. Not yet. It was the first clean breath after being held under too long. When I got home, there was a box on the doormat. No return address. Inside, my mug with the chipped handle, my framed photo from the barbecue in my small notebook, the one with the ledger, a post-it on top, found at facilities, assumed personal. Front desk. My boss had wiped the shared drives, but someone had made sure my things returned intact. I ran my thumb over the chip in the ceramic until the urge to cry passed. That night, I sent 2 emails. The first to Lauren's team with a simple subject: "Thank you for the clean start." The second to Jenna: "Take care of yourself. If you ever need a reference elsewhere, you have one." She replied a minute later, "I'm okay. For the first time in a year, I'm okay." The next morning, the numbers told a story. Even people who don't read people could understand. Renewals, stabilizing, elsewhere. Satisfaction scores, climbing, elsewhere. The place I'd left behind had learned the hardest lesson a company can learn. You can automate a dashboard, but you can't automate trust once you've deleted it. I didn't need to say a word. The receipts were speaking, and they were loud. The first cracks weren't whispers anymore. They were earthquakes. By the time January was over, the company that had paraded me out like a criminal at the Christmas party was bleeding. Projects delayed, clients pulling out, whispers of fraud. The unstoppable ship suddenly looked like it was taking on water, faster than anyone could bail, and I wasn't watching from the sidelines anymore. Lauren's team gave me space, but also firepower. My role wasn't to drag the past behind me. It was to build something sharper, leaner, cleaner. No dead weight, no endless meetings to feed egos, just results. We hit milestones in weeks that my old department couldn't hit in months. But the irony? Most of those wins came from people who had once sat beside me. One by one, they started calling. First quietly, then openly. "I'm done here," one said in a hushed tone. "They're asking me to cover data I can't defend. Can you use me?" Another wrote, "Saw the news about your new firm. Do you have room? I'll walk away from my bonus tomorrow." I didn't recruit them. I didn't need to. They came like water finding a crack, flowing naturally toward a place where the ground still felt solid. Meanwhile, my old boss doubled down. He fired more, slashed budgets, screamed at managers. He even posted some self-congratulatory nonsense on LinkedIn about leaning into adversity. The comments section told the real story. Former employees piling in with their own tales of abuse, clients questioning his numbers, recruiters smelling blood. And then came the bombshell. A client I'd saved more than once, back in the old days, when I'd pulled all-nighters just to keep their account alive, announced publicly that they were terminating their contract. The reason? Breach of trust. The exact phrase I'd heard whispered in hallways for years. That was the domino. Others followed. Within days it was trending. Not just in industry circles, in mainstream news. I tried not to gloat. Really, I did. But late one night, when the article dropped with the headline, "Toxic Leadership Exposed at Company," I poured myself a glass of cheap red wine, leaned back in the creaky kitchen chair, and let myself smile. Not a laugh, not a cheer, just a long, quiet smile. Because the truth was doing the work for me. But here's the twist. I wasn't safe either. One morning, my phone buzzed with an email. Anonymous sender. Subject line, "You think you're clean?" Inside was a single line. "We know what you did with the contracts. Stop now." No signature, no threat spelled out, just a warning. I froze. My chest tightened. Had someone planted this? Was it bluff, or was it real? I'd kept my hands clean. I'd refused to take files. But maybe someone inside wanted to drag me down with them. I showed it to Lauren. She read it once, then looked at me hard. "They're scared," she said. "If they had proof, they'd use it. This is desperation." But still, I didn't sleep that night. The storm outside my old company wasn't just theirs anymore. Pieces of it were flying my way. Anonymous calls. Sudden errors in our own accounts that smelled like sabotage. It was obvious. They were trying to rattle me, maybe even scare clients away from trusting me. But here's what they didn't get. They'd already taken everything from me once. My pride, my paycheck, my security. The only thing I had left was the truth. And once you lose everything, fear stops working the same way. So I doubled down. Every scare tactic they tried, I met with more progress. Every client they whispered lies to, I met with proof and results. And little by little, their noise stopped being frightening. It started sounding like what it really was, the death rattle of a company that had built itself on arrogance. By the end of February, my old boss wasn't posting motivational garbage anymore. He was silent. The silence of a man watching his empire collapse one unpaid invoice at a time. And me, I wasn't done, not even close, because I hadn't even played my last card yet. It wasn't a dramatic takedown, no Hollywood explosion, no viral leak that burned everything overnight. Karma prefers slower fire, the kind that eats through foundations until the whole building groans. And by March, the groaning had turned into collapse. The board called an emergency session. Not optional. Not attendance encouraged. Mandatory. Every executive was there, except my old boss, who was told to wait outside. I didn't see it with my own eyes, but Jenna, my quiet ally still inside, painted the picture later in hushed detail. They dimmed the lights. Someone plugged in a laptop, and then projected on a wall 20 feet wide came the shaky phone video. The Christmas party. My boss, smirking. The microphone squealing. His voice crisp and cruel. "You are no longer part of this company. We have passed." The room went dead silent. Then the part where security escorted me, box in hand, past fairy lights and plastic garlands. A man in the back muttered, "Jesus Christ." Another whispered, "That's illegal." And the final blow, the audio picked up laughter, his lieutenants chuckling as I walked away. The kind of laugh you can't spin as misunderstood. The board didn't care about me. Let's be honest. They cared about exposure, about regulators sniffing blood, about clients who might bolt if they thought leadership was a circus. But the timing was lethal for him. By then, compliance failures had piled up. Deleted notes, renewal stalls, clients citing breach of trust. Even the regulators were circling, asking why reporting was missing context only I had ever supplied. The board didn't need a villain. They had one already, framed in pixels, his own voice doing the work. The verdict was swift, effective immediately. He was suspended from all duties, pending review. His year-end bonus, frozen. His reputation, already bleeding out on the carpet. Claire from HR, the same one who couldn't meet my eyes that night, resigned 2 days later. Whether it was guilt or strategy, I don't know. But her exit memo was clear. Public humiliation of staff is inconsistent with our values. The sentence read like it had been bled through clenched teeth. And him? He tried. Oh, he tried. First came the denial. It was taken out of context. Then the deflection. This was a coaching moment. Finally, the desperation. If I go down, I take half this board with me. But none of it mattered. The recording was clean. The churn was undeniable. The regulators had teeth. He had built his empire on intimidation, but intimidation only works if people still fear you. And fear was gone. Meanwhile, on my side of the city, life looked different. I was working out of a small office with second-hand desks and buzzing fluorescent lights. We strung dollar store fairy lights on the wall, not to look fancy, but to make the nights less cold. My tiny team, people who had once been background faces at the old firm, laughed while we cobbled together processes that actually worked. One day we hit send on our first invoice, and when the payment cleared, we bought takeout Chinese and toasted with plastic cups. Not glamorous, not Instagram-worthy, but real. And here's the truth. I didn't need his downfall to feel whole again. I didn't need headlines or clawbacks or regulators to make it fair. Just building something clean, something mine, was already healing. But still, when Jenna texted me the final update from the board's decision, I won't lie. I read it twice, then a third time, then leaned back and closed my eyes. Suspended indefinitely. Removal pending regulator review. Bonus clawback initiated. Industry Oversight Board notified. In plain English, finished. The man who had humiliated me in front of everyone, who thought he'd broken me with 12 careless words, was out. Not quietly, not gracefully, out in disgrace. I didn't post. I didn't brag. I didn't leak a word. I just sat with it. The quiet satisfaction of knowing that sometimes, even in this cutthroat world, karma really does show up. And the best part? I hadn't lifted a finger to make it happen. December again. Snow in the air. The city glowing with holiday lights. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel dread in my chest when the season rolled around. A year earlier, I had walked out of that office with a cardboard box and humiliation clinging to me like frost. Tonight, I walked into our own rented space, a modest office above a bakery that smelled like cinnamon and yeast, carrying trays of food for a holiday potluck. The room was loud, warm, alive. Our little team had grown. Not huge, not some overnight empire, but enough to fill the mismatched chairs around the table. There was laughter bouncing off the walls, a half-decorated tree in the corner, and the hum of people who actually wanted to be there. We didn't do bonuses like the big firms, not yet, but I had set aside something small, holiday grants for every employee. Nothing extravagant, but enough to matter. When I handed out the envelopes, people clapped each other on the back, hugged, even teared up. I remembered what it felt like to sit in a room full of colleagues who pretended not to see me, who watched me be humiliated and said nothing. Tonight was the opposite. These weren't just co-workers. They were allies, family almost. In the corner, Lauren raised her glass. "To clean starts," she said simply, and we all echoed it. After dinner, I stepped outside for air. Snowflakes swirled under the yellow glow of the street lamp, just like the night I lost everything. My phone buzzed in my pocket with a news alert. I almost ignored it, but then I read the headline, "Former company CEO banned from executive roles for 5 years after labor law. Violations." I clicked. There it was in black and white. The regulators had finished their review. The man who had fired me in front of a Christmas party, who thought humiliation was leadership, was barred. Not jailed, not ruined forever, but marked, disgraced, a cautionary tale. Inside, the laughter carried through the glass. I glanced back at my team stringing lights, laughing over some ridiculous secret Santa gift. Plates piled high, and I realized something important. Not his downfall, was the victory. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to Jenna's number, and typed a message. We passed. No gloating, no explanation, just 2 words. Her reply came a minute later. We did. I slipped the phone back into my pocket, breathed in the cold air, and let the snow settle on my shoulders. 1 year ago, I walked away with nothing but a box and a heart full of shame. Tonight, I walked into a room full of people building something real, something clean, something that couldn't be deleted with a keystroke. And that was the real ending. Not revenge, not ruin, but renewal. But